Elara Finch, a 32-year-old pastry chef, nervously adjusted her Blackwood Institute of Culinary Arts cap, the humid Port Haven air clinging to her flour-dusted hands. Across the crowded auditorium, Reese Calder, 58, sat ramrod straight, his weathered face unreadable. He hadn't missed a single one of her pop-up bake sales to fund tuition. Then, 10 figures in dark suits began to move forward. Not professors offering congratulations, but men who carried themselves with a practiced stillness that spoke of something far beyond the kitchen. Silas's brothers had arrived. The 10 men moved with a synchronized grace that belied their size, drawing every eye in the auditorium. They weren't a welcoming committee of culinary dignitaries. These were men sculpted by discipline, their expressions carefully neutral, yet radiating an underlying intensity. Reese Calder, the 58-year-old veteran, didn't flinch. Had anticipated this in a way, though the sheer scale of it still felt surreal. Had known the depth of the bond Silas shared with his team, a brotherhood forged in the crucible of the Gulf War in 1991. But witnessing it manifest here at Elara Finch's graduation was something else entirely. Elara, a 32-year-old pastry chef, stood frozen, her carefully rehearsed acceptance speech dissolving into a jumble of confusion. She recognized the quiet authority in their bearing, the way their eyes scanned the room, assessing, protecting. It wasn't a threatening presence, not exactly, but it was powerful. Shed spent the last 3 years balancing 16-hour workdays at Etheridge's Hearth in Oak Haven with the demanding curriculum at Blackwood Institute in Port Haven, fueled by lukewarm coffee and the unwavering belief in her grandmother's recipes. Shed faced down skeptical instructors, navigated cutthroat kitchen competitions, and endured the constant financial strain. But this was beyond anything she could have imagined. The lead figure, a man with close-cropped dark hair and a face etched with the map of past battles, stopped directly in front of the stage. He didn't offer a smile, but his gaze held a quiet respect as he addressed the stunned audience. "Good afternoon. My name is Commander Jack Rourke." His voice was a low rumble, carrying easily through the auditorium. "We are here today not to celebrate culinary excellence, though I'm certain Miss Finch's skills are considerable. We are here to acknowledge an act of quiet heroism, a sustained commitment to one of our own." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Elara's heart hammered against her ribs. She glanced at Reese, who offered a barely perceptible nod, his weathered face softening with a hint of pride. He knew, had known all along. Elara remembered Silas, the 58-year-old man Shed first noticed huddled in the doorway of Etheridge's Hearth back in 2018. Had been a shadow then, withdrawn and wary, his eyes haunted by memories she couldn't begin to fathom. Shed simply offered him a warm croissant and a cup of coffee, then another the next day, and another after that. It hadn't been a grand gesture, just a small act of kindness, repeated consistently over the years. Shed learned his name slowly, cautiously, and discovered a quiet dignity beneath the layers of pain. Had always refused money, but had accepted the food, and sometimes a few minutes of conversation. Had rarely speak about his past, offering only fragmented glimpses of a life lived in service. When Silas returned, Rourke's voice resonated. He struggled. Many do. The transition is difficult. He distanced himself from his team, believing he didn't deserve our support. He carried his demons alone. Until he met Elara Finch. Rourke paused, his gaze sweeping over Elara. "For years, miss, Finch provided Silas with more than just food. She offered him dignity, respect, and a consistent reminder that he wasn't forgotten. She asked nothing in return. She simply saw a man in need and responded with compassion." A wave of heat flushed Elara's cheeks. She hadn't thought of it as heroism. It was just the right thing to do. Her grandmother, Nana Elsie, had always said, "A warm heart and a full stomach can mend a lot of wounds, child." Nana Elsie, who'd built Etheridge's Hearth from the ground up, had instilled in her a deep sense of community and a belief in the power of simple kindness. The chipped ceramic mug she had given Silas, a slightly imperfect piece from a set Nana Elsie had collected, felt suddenly significant. He used it every day, she knew. Silas, in his quiet way, told us about Miss Finch, Rourke continued. He spoke of her unwavering generosity, her gentle spirit, her exceptional pastries, of course. He reminded us that even in the darkest of times, humanity prevails. He asked us to be here today, not to thank him, but to thank her. Rourke turned to his team, and one by one they stepped forward, each extending a hand to Alara. Their grips were firm, calloused, and surprisingly gentle. They didn't offer platitudes or flowery speeches. They simply offered their gratitude, a silent acknowledgement of the profound impact Shed had on one of their own. "We've established a fund," Rourke announced, addressing the audience again in Miss Finch's name, dedicated to supporting veterans struggling with homelessness in the Port Haven area. "It's a small token of our appreciation and a testament to the power of her example." The auditorium erupted in applause. Alara felt tears welling up in her eyes, blurring her vision. She looked at Reese, who was now openly smiling, his eyes glistening with emotion. Head always believed in her, even when Shed doubted herself. Head sacrificed his own comfort to support her dreams, selling his prized collection of vintage fishing lures to help cover tuition. As the applause subsided, a figure emerged from the back of the auditorium. It was Silas, his weathered face etched with a rare smile. He walked slowly, deliberately, towards the stage, leaning heavily on a cane. He stopped in front of Alara, his eyes locking with hers. "These are the most important thing I have," he said, his voice trembling. "I want you to have them, as a reminder of what you've done." Alara stared at the dog tags, her hand shaking. She couldn't accept them. They were too precious, too symbolic. "Silas, please," he insisted, his gaze unwavering. "They're a symbol of brotherhood. And you, Miss Finch, you're one of us now." Before Alara could respond, Rourke stepped forward. "Miss Finch, we also have a small invitation for you. We'd like you to join us at Grey Rock Veterans Retreat next month. We often host workshops and events for veterans and their families. We think your culinary skills, and more importantly, your compassionate spirit, would be a welcome addition." Alara's mind reeled. Grey Rock. Shed heard of it. A secluded retreat nestled in the mountains. A place where veterans could find healing and reconnection. It was an honor, an incredible opportunity. But it also felt daunting. Shed spent so long focused on her own dreams, on escaping the small town of Oakhaven. Now, she was being asked to step into a world she knew little about, a world of sacrifice, trauma, and unwavering loyalty. She glanced at Reese, seeking his guidance. He simply nodded, his eyes filled with encouragement. "Go," he said softly. "You have a gift, Alara. Share it with those who need it most." Alara took a deep breath, steeling her resolve. She would go. She would learn. She would continue to use her skills, her passion, to make a difference in the lives of others. She looked at Silas, his face radiating a quiet peace she hadn't seen before. She knew, with a certainty that settled deep within her soul, that this was just the beginning. The journey to Blackwood Institute had been challenging, but it had prepared her for something far greater. Something that extended beyond the walls of a kitchen, beyond the pursuit of culinary perfection, something that touched the very heart of what it meant to be human. As the crowd began to disperse, Alara noticed a young woman approaching her, a reporter from the Port Haven Gazette, notepad in hand. "Finch," she said, her voice eager. "This is an incredible story. Can we get a quote? What are your plans now?" Alara smiled, a genuine, heartfelt smile that reached her eyes. She looked at the dog tags clutched in her hand, at Reese standing proudly nearby, and at Silas, finally at peace. She knew her life had irrevocably changed. She had a story to tell, a message to share. And she knew, with absolute conviction, that the sweetest ingredients weren't always found in a recipe book. Sometimes they were found in the quiet acts of kindness that connected us all. She began to speak, her voice clear and strong, ready to share the story of a pastry chef, a veteran, and the unexpected power of a warm heart. But as she spoke, she noticed a flicker of movement at the edge of the auditorium, a figure standing in the shadows, observing her with an intensity that sent a shiver down her spine. Someone else had been watching, someone who hadn't revealed themselves, and their presence hinted at a deeper, more complex story yet to unfold. The reporter's question hung in the air, but Alara found her gaze drawn back to the shadowed figure. He was tall, lean, and dressed in a dark suit that seemed out of place amidst the celebratory atmosphere. His face was obscured by the dim lighting, but she could feel his eyes on her, assessing, calculating. It wasn't a hostile gaze, not exactly, but it was observant, uncomfortably so. She quickly dismissed the feeling, attributing it to the lingering adrenaline of the past few minutes. It had been a whirlwind, a complete and utter shock. "I am still processing everything," she stammered, turning back to the reporter. "I think, for now, I just want to focus on using my skills to give back. The invitation to Grey Rock is incredibly generous, and I'm honored to accept. I believe food has a unique power to heal and connect people, and I'm eager to explore how I can use my passion to support our veterans." The reporter scribbled furiously in her notepad, peppering Alara with questions about her culinary philosophy, her grandmother's influence, and her future plans. Alara answered as best she could, her mind still racing. She couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, though. Every time she glanced towards the back of the auditorium, the figure seemed to have subtly shifted position, always remaining just out of clear view. Reese, sensing her unease, gently placed a hand on her arm. "You're doing wonderfully, Alara," he said, his voice a calming presence. "Don't let them overwhelm you." She managed a weak smile. "It's just, I feel like something's off. Like someone's waiting for something to happen." Reese followed her gaze, his eyes narrowing as he scanned the crowd. He didn't see anyone overtly suspicious, but he was a man who trusted his instincts. Years of experience had taught him to read people, to detect subtle cues that others might miss. "He'll keep an eye out," he said quietly. "Don't worry about it." The interview eventually concluded, and the auditorium began to empty. Alara found herself surrounded by well-wishers, offering congratulations and words of encouragement. She shook hands, exchanged pleasantries, and tried to maintain a semblance of composure, but her thoughts kept returning to the shadowed figure. Silas, leaning heavily on his cane, approached her, his face etched with a mixture of gratitude and weariness. "You handled that beautifully, Miss Finch," he said, his voice raspy. "You're a remarkable woman." "Please, call me Alara," she said, smiling warmly. "And thank you, Silas. You're the one who deserves all the credit. You're the one who inspired me." He shook his head. "No, you reminded me of the good in the world. That's a gift beyond measure." He paused, his gaze drifting towards the back of the auditorium. "I saw him too, the man in the shadows." Alara's heart skipped a beat. "You did? He's been here for a while," Silas said, his voice low. "I don't recognize him, but I know a look when I see one. Hayes. Professional, observant. He doesn't belong here." "Do you think Hayes a threat?" Alara asked, her voice barely a whisper. Silas shrugged. "I don't know, but I wouldn't underestimate him." "He's watching you, Alara. Be careful." The warning sent a chill down her spine. She glanced towards the back of the auditorium, but the figure had vanished. He had simply melted into the shadows, leaving no trace of his presence. Reese, who had been listening to their conversation, stepped forward. "Ill alert security," he said, his voice firm. "We need to find out who he is and what he wants." "Thank you, Reese," Alara said, her voice trembling. "I appreciate it." As Reese headed towards the security office, Elara found herself alone with Silas. She couldn't shake the feeling of dread that was creeping over her. Something wasn't right. This wasn't just a celebration of kindness and generosity. There was something else going on, something hidden beneath the surface. Silas hesitated, his gaze clouding over with a familiar pain. "It's possible," he said finally. "There are things, complications, that I've tried to leave behind. Things that have a way of resurfacing." He didn't elaborate, and Elara didn't press him. She knew he was reluctant to talk about his past, and she respected his privacy. But she couldn't help but wonder if the man in the shadows was connected to the events that had led Silas down the path of homelessness and despair. "I just want to understand," she said softly. "I want to know what's going on and how I can help." Silas looked at her, his eyes filled with gratitude. "You've already done more than enough, Elara. You've given me a reason to believe in humanity again. That's a gift I'll never forget." He reached into his pocket and pulled out the chipped ceramic mug, the one Elara had given him years ago. He held it out to her. "Take this," he said, "as a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there is always hope." Elara accepted the mug, her fingers brushing against his calloused hand. It felt warm and comforting, a tangible symbol of their connection. She knew she would cherish it forever. As they stood there, lost in thought, a young woman approached them. She was dressed in a sharp business suit and carried a sleek leather briefcase. Her eyes were cold and calculating, and her expression was devoid of emotion. "Mr. Blackwood," she said, her voice crisp and professional. "My name is Agent Davies with the Department of Defense. I need to speak with you. It's about a matter of national security." Silas's face paled. He looked at Elara, his eyes filled with a mixture of fear and resignation. "It seems," he said, his voice barely a whisper, "my past has finally caught up with me." Agent Davies ignored Elara, her gaze fixed on Silas. "We need you to come with me, Mr. Blackwood." Now, Silas hesitated, glancing at Elara one last time. He seemed to be weighing his options, torn between his desire to protect her and his duty to his country. "Go with her, Silas," Elara said, her voice firm. "Whatever this is, you need to deal with it." Silas nodded, his jaw clenched. He turned to Agent Davies and began to walk towards the exit, his cane tapping rhythmically against the floor. Agent Davies followed closely behind, her eyes scanning the room as if expecting an ambush. The chipped ceramic mug warmed Elara's hands, a small comfort against the sudden chill that had settled over the auditorium. Agent Davies, a woman who moved with the efficiency of a well-oiled machine, hadn't even offered a cursory explanation, simply stating Silas Blackwood, a name Elara hadn't heard him use in years, was required for a matter of national security. The words felt hollow, insufficient to explain the fear that had flickered across his face, the years of carefully constructed peace crumbling around him. Reese, having returned from a brief conversation with security, looked grim. "They're not saying much," he reported, his voice low. "Just that it's a sensitive operation, and they need to debrief him immediately. They've taken him to a secure facility outside Port Haven." Elara felt a surge of helplessness. She had spent years offering Silas small kindnesses, a warm pastry, a listening ear, a moment of human connection. She had believed she was simply offering comfort, unaware she was tending to a wound that ran far deeper than she could have imagined. The gratitude in his eyes, the quiet dignity he carried despite his circumstances, now felt laced with a hidden burden. "What kind of operation?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Reese shook his head. They wouldn't elaborate. "Something about a compromised asset, a potential threat. It's complicated." He paused, studying her face. "You're shaken, Elara. You should go home, get some rest." "I can't just go home," she protested, clutching the mug tighter. "He needs help. I need to know what's happening." "There's nothing we can do right now," Reese said gently. "They're federal agents, Elara. We can't interfere." But Ilara wasn't one to stand idly by. The image of Silas, his shoulders slumped with a weariness that went beyond physical exhaustion, burned in her mind. She remembered the stories had occasionally let slip, fragmented memories of a life lived on the edge, of sacrifices made, of comrades lost. She had always assumed they were the ramblings of a man haunted by trauma, but now she wondered if they were carefully guarded secrets, waiting to be unearthed. "I'm going to try to find out more," she said, her voice firm. "I'm going to call someone who might be able to help." She thought of Old Man Hemlock, a retired lawyer who lived on the outskirts of Oak Haven. Had been a friend of her grandfather, a man known for his sharp intellect and his unwavering commitment to justice. He might not be able to directly intervene, but he could offer guidance, perhaps even point her in the right direction. Reese didn't try to dissuade her. He knew Ilara's determination, her unwavering sense of right and wrong. "Be careful," he warned. "This is bigger than you think." The drive to Hemlock's house was a blur. Ilara's mind raced, piecing together fragments of information, trying to make sense of the unfolding events. She remembered Silas mentioning a brotherhood, a bond forged in service. Shed dismissed it as a metaphor, a way of describing the camaraderie Head found in the small acts of kindness Shed offered. Now, she wondered if it was something far more literal. Hemlock, a man of 87 with a twinkle in his eye and a voice that rasped like dry leaves, listened patiently as Ilara recounted the events of the evening. He didn't interrupt, didn't offer platitudes, simply absorbed the information with a quiet intensity. Ilara's heart leaped. "Disappeared? But he's been living in Oak Haven for years." "Under an assumed identity, no doubt," Hemlock said. "It's not uncommon for operatives to go off the grid, to start new lives. Sometimes it's by choice, sometimes it's necessitated." He paused, his expression growing somber. The Gulf War was a messy affair, Ilara. A lot of things happened that the public never knew about. A lot of secrets were buried. He explained that accessing information about Silas's past would be difficult, if not impossible. The records would be classified, sealed away from public scrutiny. But he suggested contacting a journalist he knew, a woman named Evelyn Reed, who specialized in investigative reporting. "Evelyn has a knack for uncovering hidden truths," Hemlock said. "She's not afraid to ruffle feathers, to ask the tough questions. She might be able to shed some light on this situation." Evelyn Reed, a woman with a sharp wit and an even sharper intellect, agreed to help. She warned Ilara that the investigation could be dangerous, that powerful forces might try to silence her. But she also assured her that she wouldn't back down. "The truth deserves to be known," Evelyn said, her eyes blazing with determination, "no matter how uncomfortable it may be." Together, they began to unravel a complex web of deceit and betrayal. They discovered that Silas had been involved in a covert operation during the Gulf War, a mission that had gone horribly wrong. Had witnessed something he wasn't supposed to see, something that implicated high-ranking officials in a conspiracy. Had tried to expose the truth, but had been silenced, discredited, and forced to disappear. The revelation was devastating. Ilara felt a wave of anger and betrayal wash over her. She had been used, manipulated, a pawn in a dangerous game. But she refused to be intimidated. She was determined to help Silas, to expose the truth, to bring those responsible to justice. She and Evelyn discovered Silas was being held at Grey Rock Veterans Retreat, a secluded facility ostensibly dedicated to helping veterans heal from trauma. But it was, in reality, a black site, a clandestine prison used to interrogate and silence those who posed a threat to national security. As Silas was being led to safety, he turned to Ilara, his eyes filled with gratitude. "You saved my life," he said, his voice choked with emotion. "You saved mine too," Ilara replied, her voice trembling. "You showed me the power of kindness, the importance of standing up for what's right." The truth about the Gulf War conspiracy was eventually exposed. Thanks to Evelyn's relentless reporting and the courage of Silas and his comrades, the officials involved were brought to justice, and the secrets that had been buried for so long were finally brought to light. Alara continued to pursue her culinary dreams, opening a small bakery in Porthaven, a place where she could share her passion for food and her commitment to community. She never forgot Silas, and she remained a steadfast advocate for veterans, using her platform to raise awareness about the challenges they face. The chipped ceramic mug, a constant reminder of their connection, held a place of honor in her kitchen. And sometimes, when the scent of cinnamon and sugar filled the air, she would catch a glimpse of a familiar figure in the doorway, a quiet smile on his face. Silas, finally at peace, finally home.